All right, folks, I'm the Amazing Vito, and today I got a really special guest, a man who has done a lot for comedy. Who has at one time he had a show, it was very popular. It was comedy at Club 54 with the one and only Mr. Ben Guyatt. Ben, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing, Vito?
Good, good. I'm here just contemplating. We were showing each other. There was the famous F1 race yesterday.
Yeah.
Me and Ben are delusion. Like we don't look at Formula One anymore, but we're like showing off our cars. You can see he's got about those are all back there. He's got, I know for a fact that one
Formula One,
showing me
yeah.
earlier is worth over $1,500.
Oh, 15,000.
15, yes, that the one. No, the other
Yeah,
one.
over here, Michael Schumacher's first
Yeah,
championship
but there's
car, yeah.
also you also have Senna's. He's got Senna's. He's got Villeneuve's car. He's got Greg Moore's car. If people forgot
Yeah.
about Greg Moore, but he's got him. He's got not only those, but he's got more.
I know
So,
it's running out of room.
but it's a cool setup. Mine are just like mine are just. I need a better setup than that. I mean, I got kids coming over. My son, I notice he will him and his buddies. I tell him if you touch my cars, I'll break your hands. You know what I mean? And I noticed they screw around with the cars, and I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
like. You got your toys, I got my toys. Mommy's got her toys. So everybody's got
We should get
toys,
into that, Vito.
but I don't like people playing with my toys.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
never opened those cabinets, right? Like I was
no,
telling you, those are CD cabinets,
yeah,
but the cars fit perfectly, right?
it's beautiful, Ben. I
Well,
mean,
thank you, sir.
it's really well done.
About
All
10
right,
years of
so
collecting. Anyway,
we're gonna talk about I remember being in the States, and all of a sudden I didn't know the reach that Club 54, for some reason it was playing in the United States. And I remember I was playing a club and it was on TV, and there it was, and it was a wonderful time. People were just uh club was packed. There's 500 people in there going nuts. The
be
music's
jammed, man.
playing. Everybody's having a wonderful time. Um, yeah, I miss that. So, how long did the show go on for?
Let's see. We started Club 54 in 1992 or 91, and we taped that show right up until 2001. So I did 9 years at Club 54, and then I did a year at another bar in Burlington called Veranda Beach. And the very first show was done at Chap's restaurant, which is like a roadhouse. Their specialty was chicken wings on John Street in Hamilton. That was where we first shot the show, and I was still living in New York at the time, so the commute was like a nightmare. So in total, we did 11 seasons of stand-up comedy, which is a lot, a lot.
Yeah, in this day and age, I mean, you get
Yeah,
two, if you're lucky, 2 or 3 seasons. That was the beauty back then, where if you had I remember the numbers that you were bringing in. They must have loved you at CHCH, or was it CHCH?
yeah. It was well, CHCH. I did what they call Vito as which is you'd never get this deal now. But back then they called it a facilities deal, and what that was the owner of the bar, Gene, right, Quantum Mateo Club 54, for example. He was executive producer, so he was the one that was giving out the money, signing the checks, and then I, being the producer, I gave the money to the comedians, and we owned the rights to the show, but CH had the right to broadcast it for so many years. And so we didn't have to pay for cameras, audio. I mean, that's millions of dollars.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and so you would never get a deal like that today. There's no such thing as a facilities deal now, unless your name is Steven Spielberg. Otherwise, it ain't going to happen. So we were very fortunate that we seemed to hit it at just the right time for
Oh
doing the show.
God, it was a different time completely. I remember
Yeah.
at Rogers, when I would do shows for Rogers, and I would do an entertainment segment for them, and they had like millions of dollars of equipment. I could
Yeah.
edit, I could do all this stuff, and
Yeah.
uh, they were like, I remember you could go in, talk to the station manager. He'd sit you down. He'd complain about, um, about anything. I can't really say,
Yeah.
but anyways, he would complain, and then you just go, all right, you're doing the show, great. Go grab the camera work. Do you need a cameraman? Yes. All right, go get that crap. Just don't get into an accident with the truck. And
Yeah.
it was a different time. It was like you would go shoot, come back. I could edit all my stuff, and
Yeah.
it was wonderful. And now it's just,
You know what it is too, though, Vito. When we were shooting a TV show, and it's probably not a nice thing to say, but I don't think you'd find many people who've done TV that would disagree with me. And that is that back in those days, you had the president of the station, the vice president, and then you had all these, this hierarchy of executives at a TV network. And CH, believe it or not, wasn't just local; it was national, right? I mean, everybody seems to think it's a small town station. It wasn't. That show went, like you said, it went into the United States, and my neighbors watched it when I lived in New York, which is weird. And back then, my point is, they were smart enough, the executives, because they were never comics, they were never writers. They handled the financial end, and they let myself and Gene and a handful of others do the creative stuff. And I think that's why the show was a success and it lasted so long. And it's even it's in reruns now on 2 different networks. Today, you couldn't do that show because all the suits, they think they know everything. And they try to get their hands into the creative side, and they always bugger things up. At least that's the way I see it.
well, they don't. I mean, I talked to Mike Bullard, and he was
Great
telling me,
interview, by the way.
yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and he uh, he told me like his budget just to do a show. At one time, the Mike Bullard show was beating Leno.
Yeah.
It was beating
Yeah.
Letterman in the ratings.
Yeah.
Um, well, their budget, I think, per show was $29,000, which sounds like a lot, but
It's not. It's not.
it's
It's a cup of
zero.
coffee.
Like it's honestly, it is absolutely zero.
Yeah.
If somebody was telling me like this Netflix show, just the Netflix show per episode was something like 1.8 million per episode. And if you
Yeah.
watch the show, you're going, where did there's only 6 actors in here. What you got? Like, did you guys have, you didn't even CGI a moon? Like, what do you
Yeah.
you guys are just talking like in a bar. Or, this is 1.8, like an episode. Like, it was,
Yeah.
Ben, it was outrageous. Like, it was
Part of the reason for that, though, I think, Vito, and we didn't have this problem. I didn't have to deal with unions, and
yeah, that's
yeah, CHTV. I mean, they had their own union for the tech guys, right? But that did not spill over into the creative side. And I remember that actor at one time jumped on me saying that you really should be part of ACTRA, and I already was a part of ACTRA, right? Individually, I was, but the comedians were not, and they wanted the comedians to be ACTRA to come on, and I said no. I'm not letting you guys get involved with this because you'll screw it up. And then they said, well, you should be at least paying ACTRA scale. Well, when they found out I was actually paying more than ACTRA scale, they backed right off. But they would occasionally come to me and say, do you want to make this show part of the union? And I'd always say no, because we had more freedom that way, right? If the comic wanted to do the show. It's a great audition tape to send it to Just for Laughs or down to the United States. That's the reason most of these guys did the show, not because it paid so great, but because it was a tape that you could physically take to someone and say, here, look at this.
yeah.
And,
Like, you got a killer audience. You got people going crazy. They're laughing at everything you say. Say hello, they're going loopy. I
yeah,
remember, and
we
it
used to get
sucked.
400 people at taping.
No, I know. What sucked was, do you remember, I was
Crazy.
going to be the next guy like a month later. And then Ben's like, yeah, we got no more show. And I was just like,
Yeah, that was the Asper family that did that. because see, they bought CH and they just cleaned house. And I don't think
That's
TV's ever been the same since the late 90s. It's all a
I
lot of people that don't know what they're doing.
Well, I don't watch Ben, I don't watch new shows. If I do, I only watch maybe 10 or 15 minutes of it. I talked to Schoenberg about this, who's
Yeah.
worked on 500 movies. I have no um I just don't like the new stuff. Like it's not that, everybody's like, "Well, what the hell's wrong? What's, what's with the
Do you mean
wrong?"
the new stuff comedy wise or generally?
Both, both.
Both.
I just don't to me it's all and we're not going to get into politics, but it's just too political for me to just go, honestly, just make funny, man. I don't care. I don't
Right.
want to hear about uh how much this person sucks, how much
Yeah, there's a lot of
this,
that.
but it's like, I don't care. Just make me laugh.
Yeah.
Just make a show. I don't want to know about, I don't want an agenda. I don't want that. I just want a good show.
And then you know what? Back then, I've even tonight the show's on. CH is showing a replay of it tonight, and I'm thinking people at home, when they watch that, sometimes they'll come up to me and say, "I like that show. I didn't like that show." Occasionally, I will get somebody who will come up and be so offended by something that we taped in 1996.
Whoa.
And I think I told you at one time, when the clubs back in the 90s, people or a TV taping, they came out to be entertained, to get a couple of laughs, forget about their lives for 10 seconds. Now, I wouldn't want to do the TV show now, because now the only people that seem to be coming out are the ones that want to be offended,
Yeah.
looking for something to offend them. I'm not into that.
Yeah. They go to a show now and you see it where uh instead of just going there, like I always ask, I always go, "You guys having a good time? You guys happy? You're all right?" And there's always some miserable swine just sitting there like this, just sitting there going, "I'm going to complain about something." And it's just, it to me, I remember how it was. And people are going, "Get over it, old man." And I'm like, blow it out your ass. How it
Yeah.
was awesome. If you were stupid enough to go and complain at a comedy club and just say, "I don't like what this person's saying." Hey, there were sometimes I could tell you off air how many people I did not enjoy what they would say, but
Right.
that's on them.
Right.
You're the
Right.
booker. You could book them or not. I'm not going to poison you and go, "Ben, you shouldn't book this person."
Yeah.
Me personally, if I don't find this person funny or her funny or
Yeah.
whatever, that's on me. Because there's some things I find funny and there's other things I don't find funny. There are
I'd catch
things,
flack for that, like,
but there are things that people go, "Dude, we don't find this funny." I don't care. That's
yeah.
everybody's different. But you going to the front and complaining, it's like going to McDonald's and constantly going, "The Big Mac explodes in my hand every time I take a bite out of it. The ass
Yeah.
and explodes." It's like, yes, it's a Big Mac. It's been doing that since
Yeah.
1973. You know?
Yeah. It's, you know what? And when people see the finished product of a TV show, they don't know that all the work behind the scenes that went in to make that 23-minute show. Uh, and it sometimes I felt, Vito, like I was a valet, a psychiatrist, a psychologist,
Well, you have
an
to.
MD. Like some of these guys had to be spoon fed, right?
You
Because
know,
they're egos, right? And I won't name them, but in all the years that we did the show, there was maybe 5 guys that were so arrogant and hard to work with. I'd never work with them again. And a couple of them were American. And
what
one
I
guy
need.
refused to go on because he was late for the taping, Vito. This is just to give you a sampling of what I had to put up with. My job was easy on TV. I was just a talking head. Here's the guy. I wasn't trying to be funny. That's not my job. My job was to host and produce. All my work was beneath the tip of the iceberg, right? And when a comic didn't do well, I heard about it. I heard about it from like CHCH TV. I heard it from the public, the Comedy Network. That's where most of where I was a whipping post when somebody did poorly. But there was one night, there was a guy from South Carolina who's pretty famous, and he absolutely refused to go on because nobody would pay for his parking. And I said, for Christ's sakes, how much is your parking? I can't even make this up. It was $4. He was threatening not to go on over $4. So I gave him $4, and then he was as happy as a pig in shit. That's how some of them think.
Yeah, but some of them, you ever notice how weird, like how cheap some comics are? Like I remember, like some are just very. What do you need? Here, pay me back or whatever. Good luck. Like
Yeah.
just solid individuals. Where some are just, they're
Prima
weird. Man.
donnas.
They're weird. Like the stuff they pull. Like I'm not gonna say. I'll tell you after who it was. I was in the green room with them, and just the arrogance. And he had a girl that was, let's say, a little young, sitting there, and this mother moron is sitting with him. Goes, where are you from? And I was living in London at the time, London, Ontario.
Yeah.
And I go, London, and I think this was the club out in.
I think I know
was
who
such
you're
an idiot.
about.
He was such an idiot. He goes to me, London, London. And I go, yeah. And he goes, so like, he starts talking to me about the pound and what's the conversion rate of the pound. And I go, what are you talking about, man? He goes,
and tell by your accent that you're not
I'm
from
like,
London,
I'm like, I mean, this is.
We had a guy, you know who it is too. He's a Canadian comedian. And of all the stories I've got a lot of great stories about shooting that show, and the good stuff, the bad stuff, and the absolute nightmare stuff. This one was, I was already in a bad mood. I forget why I was in a bad mood that night, but we were taping, and maybe I was sick. I don't know. And this guy comes up to me, he goes, they're doing the lighting wrong. And I went, okay, what's wrong with it? And he said, well, I went on stage and I saw the playback, and I don't like the way I'm looking. And I'd like to speak to the lighting director. And I thought, you know what, you're asking for it. So I said, okay, come with me. And I introduced him to Brad, who was our lighting director, who, by the way, was chosen by NBC to do the lighting for their Olympics. So, he obviously doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And this comedian went over and started telling Brad how to do his job. And I'll never forget it, because Brad was a biker, big beard, and he just turned to him and he went, hey, fuck off. You just be funny. That's why you're here. And I thought the guy was going to cry. And he's a very arrogant comedian in this country. And he's very funny, but incredibly arrogant. And
I know who you're talking about. It's Bill Daff.
I know you know who I'm talking
about. Once Bill touched me, and he said, don't say anything. And I was just like, okay, whatever. And he was like, I'll make you famous, kid. So, Bill, you're a perv. You're an absolute perv. And then we ended up in the hot tub together after, and it was awesome. Anyway,
was it his hot tub?
Yeah, in his hot tub.
It had to be his hot tub.
No, it wasn't Bill Davern. Bill's an awesome guy. But I know who you're talking about. He's, it's funny. And you hear like a few guys that pull that years later, wish they didn't. And it was the time of, I think it was in people's psyche that I'm going to, I did 2 or 3 Lettermans, or I did, like, I interviewed, whatever. And it's just you're just sitting there going, buddy, that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like people, humans do not have the memory of an elephant. They have the memory of a gnat.
Yeah.
So unless you were on television in the last couple of years or 4 or 5 years, you're talking 20 years. You're not at that. It's like when Hulk Hogan went back to the WWF. Remember when he was the flagship?
Yeah.
Vince McMahon said to him, goes, listen, you were awesome in the 80s. You were my, number one, but you cannot ask for 10 million a WrestleMania anymore. Those days are gone.
These guys are doing it though. Oh, well, back then at the tapings they were, and one of the reasons I think it was smart to shoot the show in Burlington at Club 54 is I wasn't near Toronto. Because if I was in Toronto, things would have turned out a lot different. I think the suits would eventually, the show wouldn't have lasted as long as it did, because we were not influenced by the egos and the arrogance of the industry in Toronto. And as you know, I lived in New York, I lived in Los Angeles, and the way they think down there and the way they think up here is night and day.
Like, what's
And
the difference? And I hear this all the time. Tell me what was your how was it? What was the difference between America and the US? Like LA, uh, Canada.
regarding like the industry,
Yeah, regarding like anything entertainment wise.
um, I kind of compare it to the story about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. That there was a producer in London, England, um, who had a shot at the Beatles and he passed on them. And that it's incredible that you would, but then not everybody's an armchair quarterback. You can't tell the future. So when Mick Jagger came along on the Rolling Stones, he signed them instantly because he didn't want to lose another opportunity of something that could be great. That analogy applies to the United States and Canada. It's very difficult to get in to see anybody in either country, the higher ups, the suits. But in the United States, they will at least give you a shot. And I find in Canada, it's who you know, who you blow, and a lot of connections, just to get to meet the secretary who opens the door to the hostess, who opens the door to the coffee getter, who opens the door to the executive. I remember in Los Angeles, I would call up like international creative management. And this is a true story. Swear to God, true story. I called them up. I was not being represented by ICM, the biggest talent agent in the world, right? And I just called them up and I said, my name's Ben Guyatt. I've written a screenplay. I think you may be interested in it. I was expecting to hear no, because that's all I ever heard in Toronto. And the lady said, can you hang on a second? And I was on hold and I thought, I'm going to get a speech here. This guy came on and it was an agent. Howard Rask was his name. He was a big agent in Los Angeles. And I was blown away. And he said, tell me a bit about yourself. Well, I'm from Canada and I just moved down here and I've written a script. I think it's got some legs. He goes, how about tomorrow at 2:00? I couldn't believe it. I was in that guy's office at 2:00 looking at the Hollywood sign through the pane glass windows, the bay windows. And they signed me. And I signed. They were my literary agent in Los Angeles, ICM. Do you think you could do that in Toronto? No way. I have sent scripts that were better than that to producers in Toronto. They never read it. And if they do read it, it's not really what we're looking for. It's the form letter. And that's why Canadian, and I'll just come right out and say it, the Canadian film industry is terrible. There's no star making machine here. You've got to go south of the border to get anywhere. It's sad, but it's true. But and I did the TV show. I was very successful, made some pretty good money on it, but that money didn't come till later. Right. And I'm not a billionaire. Everybody thinks because you're on TV for over a decade that I'm driving a Ferrari. The only Ferrari in this house is the one behind me in that cabinet. So, if that makes any sense.
No, I know what you're saying, but you know what bothers me is I would submit scripts, show ideas to the CBC, and
Well, that was your first mistake.
huge. And for you, I did this for years, and finally I got a hold of the guy who you'd send it to, and first you get his email and blah blah.
Yeah.
And then finally I got the guy on the phone after a couple of years, and I said, I keep sending you stuff, and then 6 months later I get an email saying, sorry, we're gonna pass on it or blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay. And I just thought, all right, I thought it'd be interesting or whatever.
Yeah.
And then finally it was about Ben. I just came out and said it after about 5 or 6 years. I go, you guys don't even look at the crap I send you, do you?
They
And
don't.
he goes, to be honest with you, we don't. He goes, what we, you it's like a small network. You got to associate yourself with a producer that is
Mhm.
already part of our little family.
Yes.
And once you get in there, then maybe they will look at it. But you're always um
Well,
like
those days of a talented script or a talented person, which I would say all that was true right up until 2000, 2001. After that, because of, email and social media, it is actually harder to get in touch with the people that you need to get in touch with to get the project made, because they can hide behind email. They can say they're so busy when in fact they're really not. And the cream should really rise to the top in this country. It does not. In the
no,
United States, it does, right? In America, it does rise to the top because Americans, this is the thinking of an American producer. They know that their ass is on the line if they take a pass at something that goes to another network or another movie studio that's a massive hit. They'll be out of a job, and they, like the old line says, you'll never work in this town again. So at least they'll look at it. The first page, they'll read it and go, it's shit. And they move on to the next script. Because Howard told me, and this was back in, oh God, this is in 1989, 90. I asked him, after we became friends and he was my agent, how many scripts do you get a day? Him personally, just him, Vito, was over 120 scripts a day.
yeah.
And I said, how do you read all those scripts? He goes, I don't. I go, what do you do? And he said, all I do is I got the script. I open the first page. I read the first couple of paragraphs. If it grabs me, I set it on the left side. If it doesn't, it goes on the huge stack that goes to the ceiling on the right side. But in Canada, they don't want to look at anything. And like you said, it's who you know. It's the little clique of people that
Yeah, unless you're
the
on
same
this
old
app,
faces all the
yeah,
time, right?
unless you're on a show called This Hour Has Too Many Minutes, like that bloody show's been on since is it still on the air?
I think so. But yeah, it's actually a pretty good show. It's well written, but
Sure, because
experiment with other things, you guys, like I don't understand it anymore. And I don't want to understand it anymore. Canada is Canada. Great. I still think it's the greatest country in the world. However, when it comes to entertainment, why does everybody go south
well,
to
we
make it
always,
big?
for some reason, we've always, I mean, I grew up on BBC,
Right.
right? So, I mean, they used to show Wayne and Schuster, which was to me, I, even as a kid, I was like, these jokes are just so corny. I don't get, Wayne and Schuster, which,
Yeah.
and then you go on the BBC and they've got, Dave Allen sitting there having a
God,
cigarette
he
telling
was
you dirty
great
jokes, and then you've got on the buses,
on
you've
the bar.
got
Yeah.
you've got so many Benny Hill,
Yeah.
which now he's not allowed, you can't mention Benny Hill over there. They even took away Little Britain years
Yeah.